I have a few different subjects to cover, but first I want to start this one off with an apology to Clayton McAllister over here. I had gotten him mixed up for someone named Clayton Fast that I had done a video about in the past, and Clayton Fast and Clayton McAllister both have a very similar beard, so I apologize for that, Mr. McAllister, and also I just want to say that he and I have also spoken about this. So I'm glad that this is cleared up, and thank you for accepting my apology. So now to move on to talk about something called the Accountability Project, otherwise known as 1 Million Charges for the People. That's going to be the thing I'll cover next. But I'll also be talking about some QAnon BS, the New Age, otherwise known as the New Cage, as I like to say, Biodigital Convergence, and some of the standardization organizations, as well as something called twinning and the Internet of X things. And I'll also be reading about Indigenous perspectives on the biodigital convergence as well. So here, that image I just showed had Freedom George, otherwise known as Tyson Billings, promoting this. You have Ron Clarke, someone named Dana who goes by the name Raven. She's out in Newfoundland, I think. And then you have Gordon James Berry Jr., who I have had numerous interactions with, and I've also spoken about him in prior videos. So what's interesting about this accountability project, if you will, is that it's promoted by various people, including Edward Cornell, Vincent Gircys, and Jeremiah Jost. So for people that don't know, Edward Cornell is part of Vets for Freedom. Jeremiah Jost is a contractor in his late 20s or early 30s, I believe. And then you have Vincent Gircys, former Ontario provincial police officer. So what's interesting about this combination of people here is that Gordon was part of the Save the Children convoy along with Ron Clarke. And Vets for Freedom released a video that was supposedly like a leak, a whistleblower. They basically appeared like whistleblowers, and they had shown what was supposed to be the Save the Children convoy's plan. Although the person doing the voice, who was doing the whistleblowing, so to speak, his name is Sean Bradley, goes by Iron Crow, and he's Gordon's friend. Now, what's funny about all this is that if they were speaking out against the Save the Children convoy, who were basically following Marcus Ray's plans to a T, and people can see prior videos of mine that I'll leave links in the description for if they're lost on the references here. But the point that I'm making is that Marcus Ray's plans consisted of ex-police and ex-military. Well, Edward Cornell is part of Vets for Freedom, which is ex-military. And then you have Vincent Gircys, who's part of Policing for Freedom International, and I think he's part of Police on Guard for Thee as well. So therefore you have these controlled opposition freedom groups that include ex-veterans, ex-military and ex-police, and that is exactly what Marcus Ray's plans consisted of. Yet they were posing as whistleblowers. Therefore, that just makes what they were doing, essentially, Vets for Freedom, were just doing what they call revelation of the method. They were just telling you what's going to happen or what they want to happen. That's all. So they've always been working together. Even when they appear, they're not working together. This is part of the Order Out of Chaos, or Ordo Ab Chao agenda, and this is part of the modus operandi of controlled opposition and how they function. Calling each other out in order to cast some kind of illusion, and whether the information that they give about each other is true or false, it's just about compartmentalizing information and not giving you the full picture and steering you elsewhere. So this right here is a rally in Toronto at Queen's Park, where you have a few different people that attended, but in particular, you have in here where I've paused it, you have Richie Marquez, James McNair of the Direct Democracy Party, and Kellyanne Wolf. Richie Marquez is one of the three people working on a blockchain app that is basically supporting direct democracy. And James McNair is out here at this rally trying to sell direct democracy to the people. And the way he does is he explains that it's a quote-unquote bottom-up system where everyone just has to sign an X on a paper and that's it. And he says once we convince enough people to put an X on a piece of paper that's in each riding, they take the country back. He needs people to give out flyers and go door to door. And the address for the Direct Democracy Party is 3761 Victoria Park. So now it's interesting with this accountability project that's being promoted. What happens is Gordon here, he makes reference to the United States and how they apparently drafted indictments against Dr. Fauci. And he also mentions he wants a constitution drafted by the people in a de jure governing system. And I see a lot of different people talking about a de jure system. However, I'm not entirely sure what everybody means by that, because I hear various people from Dallas Hills using that to people in the Save the Children convoy using that term. And also I've heard Maggie Braun use that term, but I've also seen her misspell it like de jour, which is a soup, by the way. So, anyway, he also, Gordon here, decides to promote Dr. David Martin, which is kind of funny. Now, I've already done a video where I've spoken about Dr. David Martin, and so we're going to dive a little bit into his background here, which, I've already done, but I'm going to add a few details. So at George Mason University, at this presentation that's ran through Homeland Security, there are various speakers, including, like I said, Dr. David Martin. And Dr. David Martin he is a founding member of Japan's Institute for Interface, Science and Technology, and has served as chair of economic innovation for the UN-affiliated Intergovernmental Renewable Energy Organization, and has served as an advisor to numerous central banks. And I think as well he was involved in Davos, Australia as well. So here is a presentation that he had done. It says Dr. David Martin, Dr. Mark Troutman, and Dr. Denise Bacon present their first lecture on cybersecurity for critical infrastructure to Melbourne Polytechnic IT students on May 22nd of 2017. So Dr. Denise Bacon and someone named James Giordano both work together. And this is in the Biodefense Research Organization here. And it basically what happens is James Giordano, he serves as executive director for this particular organization, the Institute for Biodefense Research. And he is a neuroscientist and ethicist, although what he's promoting is definitely not ethical, as he's literally talking about bioweapons and hacking people's brains. With over 4 decades of experience in this field, his area of expertise includes the development of oversight, governance, and control of biological, chemical, and cyber informational weapons, scientific and technological approaches to human performance optimization, and international ethical, legal, and social issues of biosecurity and biodefense. We're going to actually see a picture of him in my next tab or so, or next 2 tabs. He's a professor in the departments of neurology and biochemistry and chair of subprogram in military medical ethics and co-director of the program Brain Science and Global Law and Policy at Georgetown University Medical Center. Georgetown University is a Jesuit university, by the way. Distinguished Fellow in Science, Technology, and Ethics at the Stockdale Center of the U.S. Naval Academy. Senior Fellow in Biosecurity, Technology, and Ethics in the U.S. Naval War College. And Senior Science Advisory Fellow of the SMA branch, Joint Staff Pentagon, and serves as Senior Bioethicist of the U.S. Defense Medical Ethics Center, and he's Chair Emeritus of the IEEE Brain Initiative Ethics and Technology Project, served as an appointed member of Neuroethics, Legal and Social Issues Advisory Panel of the Defense Advanced Projects Agency, DARPA, and as research fellow and task leader in the program on dual use of the European Union Human Brain Project, an advisor to the program on dual use biotechnology of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and as an appointed member of the Department of Health and Human Services Secretary's Advisory Committee for Human Research Protection. Wow. And so, yeah, fellow at the Royal Society of Medicine in the UK, a former US naval officer, and he holds designations as an aerospace physiologist, research physiologist, and research psychologist, and he served in the US Navy and the Marine Corps. So, there you have it. And this is the Institute for Biodefense Research here. I'm just going to maybe read one or two different things about it. It says, advancing the study, address, and oversight of science and technology affecting public safety and international security. And so, yeah, basically it works with numerous organizations, including the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, Department of Justice, Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Commerce, National Institute for Standards and Technology, Department of Agriculture, and NATO. Wow. So, quite a handful of alphabet soup organizations, as I'd say. So here's an interesting video where you get to hear him actually talk about these different things and what he works on, and there's all kinds of links at the side here too that people can check out here. So he's the author of 300 peer-reviewed publications, 7 books, and 35 governmental reports on bioscience, technology, biosecurity, and ethics, etc. So I think that we have gone over him enough now. So now to talk about Cheffrey Gibson over here a little bit. So I called him out in prior video, and I was supposed to do a live stream with him, and so he essentially ducked and made excuses not to do a live stream and blocked me, of course. Doesn't want to face the music. Go figure. So some of the BS that he promotes includes the quantum financial system, if you will, and also the phrase trust the path is used. We can see that in this one here. Trust the path is almost like a native version of QAnon that's just rebranded essentially. And so with this being said, you can see here that, you know, he's promoting QAnon, the storm is upon us, you know, the quantum financial system, which is just a fancy way of saying the blockchain, which is the platform for digital identity. And then also, too, I just want to say that while he's also promoting Donald Trump, of course, he's got to do better for his idols, or rather, we should not be placing people on pedestals. And so, we could talk numerous amounts about Donald Trump, such as him being a friend of Henry Kissinger, receiving what's called the Theodore Herzl Reward. So basically, Donald Trump is a Zionist. And as well, he is responsible for Operation Warp Speed and brags for bringing out the that people were mandated to take, if that makes sense. And then here we have, of course, a very dangerous meme, and I've already talked about Anonymous in prior videos, so I'm going to save my breath on that. But what I want to say about this inciting a revolution, if you will, is the root of revolution is revolve. So, therefore, all that happens with revolutions is a ever-turning wheel. And so when one tyrannical regime is taken down, all that happens is another tyrannical regime takes its place, which is generally what the rebellion is. And the rebellion and the regime are always one in the same in history, or if they're not one in the same, they are funded and supported by the same groups of people with common interests, both of those people being part of a regime and rebellion, if you will. So, interestingly enough, we have a couple of screenshots here just to show that Trina Sipico has tagged Jeremy Gibson, and so I guess he really elevated his ego, so to speak, if you will. And so for people that are unfamiliar with Trina Sipico, she is famous for basically singing when the Pope came to visit Canada and supposedly apologized for the residential schools, although she ended up gifting the Pope a headpiece of sorts. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact term, so forgive me on that one, if you will. And also, as well, in regards to Trina Sipico, she had basically, it appeared like she was singing to him. She sang something called Kakanatak, which means our village in Cree. And as well, it's interesting too, I'm not really sure what her role exactly is in the freedom movement, but we see David Golden Wolf over here, or Hollow Bone Wolf, whatever he's calling himself these days. He has this particular emblem in the back here, which is the seal of all nations, as it's called. So, essentially here, they're really pumping up Cheffrey's ego, and David basically says that Cheff is the quote-unquote light of the freedom movement. And apparently after this video, it seems like all the native stuff with Cheffrey Gibson has been really put on hold. So I don't really know where they're going with that. But like I said about trust the path, if you will, is just a rebranded way of saying trust the plan. And David says that when the world is ravaged and people come together, they'll do so under the seal of all nations as one people. The seal of all nations is that particular emblem in the back there. And then this is Trina Sipico. And yeah, people can look into her themselves if they would like. So now I'm going to read little bits and pieces of this interesting article here where I talk a little bit about the New Age, or New Cage, if you will. And the reason why I'm doing that is just because the New Age, or New Cage, whatever you want to say, it bears a lot of striking similarities to QAnon. The thing is that, typically speaking, what's held on a pedestal is what they call the Intergalactic Federation, or Galactic Federation, and that just is what replaces Donald Trump, and sometimes people use BRICS or Russia in that place for their hopium idol, if you will. So, Barbara Marx Hubbard, godmother of transhumanism and synthetic spirituality. So, Rockefeller-funded New Age guru was critical to the development of ideas, beliefs, and technology necessary to market transhumanism as spiritual enlightenment. And that's this ugly woman right here. In 2016, the Global Future Councils of the World Economic Forum posted a video entitled 8 Predictions for the World in 2030, which infamously forecasted a technocratic New World Order in which you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. It doesn't take a stretch of the imagination to ponder how WEF oligarchs plan to roll out sustainable development policies which will ration consumer goods in a global quote-unquote sharing economy that employs transient gig workers who will be rendered into propertyless serfs under a techno-communitarian rendition of neo-feudalism. But how will the globalist technocrats of the WEF sway the virtual peasant class to be happy with their permanent state of digitally indentured servitude? Very complicated terminology and such through here, so I'm going to break down some of it. So in terms of gig workers, what they're referring to, I've talked about this in a couple of my previous videos, but the gig economy, if you will, or the task-based economy, or next digital economy, there are various ways of referring to it. But basically, what happens, and you can actually see a lot of content creators are actually responsible for fueling this agenda with their digital gifts or buy me a coffee and things like this, because all those kinds of assets, if you will, which all have to do with the blockchain and Web3 based anything, what happens is they want people to be in a hybrid world using, we'll say, a metaverse type of scenario where people are in this metaverse competing for different tasks to take on, hence the term task-based economy or gig economy. And so essentially when completing these tasks or gigs, if you will, they're rewarded these digital gifts or assets. You can see this like also in the form of gold stars from people as well. So what happens is this all leads toward like a social credit system, if you will, and those digital assets are really an illusion of payment, if you will. So this is why I don't mess with the blockchain or use Bitcoin, Ethereum, NFTs, or anything like that. And I've also talked about DNA-based blockchain nodes, if you will. I've mentioned that in a few different videos, so people can check those, and that'll be linked there. So, it says here, enter New Age guru Barbara Marx Hubbard and her endorsement of HeartMath Institute's Global Coherence Initiative, which is propagating transhumanist neurofeedback wearables across the planet in order to digitally synchronize humanity's collective heart rhythms and brain waves into electronically induced states of synthetic spiritual bliss. With Hubbard's transhumanist blessings, HeartMath's global neurotech network is primed to lull plebs and proles into happy compliance with the new normal of the Fourth Industrial Revolution's techno-feudal stakeholder economy. So yeah, with these wearables and such like that, what happens is people are essentially being hooked to what's called the Internet of Bodies. And so ever since the announcement of these particular things, there has been a spate of propaganda campaigns from government bureaucrats, corporate oligarchs, and globalist technocrats who've been lecturing about the necessity to assimilate to the new normal. You probably never heard about this particular slogan until 2020, but Hubbard was prophesying the dawning of a new normal at least as far back as 2008. In fact, Hubbard foretold that 2020 would mark the pivotal year of the global shift toward the new normal that is transitioning the world into the futurist singularity envisioned by Google's director of engineering, Ray Kurzweil, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, who's a founder of Singularity University, which is a post-humanist think tank, where Hubbard promoted her dreams of harnessing conscious evolution to engineer a new transhuman species. Okay, so singularity is pretty much just another way of saying biodigital convergence, which is just the term that I'll pretty much be using. So I also want to say too that I had first heard the term singularity in approximately 2010 myself. So even prior to 2008, for decades, Hubbard foretold the coming of a new transhumanist age in which humankind will merge with technology through conscious evolution. As a crusader for the human potential movement, Hubbard networked with psychologists at the Esalen Institute and corporatists at Singularity University to pave the way for human consciousness to collectively co-evolve with the noetic consciousness of the cosmos through transhumanist technologies, bankrolled by Rockefeller philanthropy. Hubbard established the foundation for conscious evolution, which has been pushing the synergistic advancement of biotech, nanotech, and supercomputing artificial intelligence that can be globally converged through the Internet of Things and the Internet of Bodies in order to engineer a new transhuman species. To help build the collective cybernetic nervous system of an evolving transhuman superorganism, Hubbard promoted the HeartMath Institute's Global Coherence Network of wearable neurofeedback technologies that interlink human biorhythms through smartphones across the planet. Wow. If you don't like the idea of big tech biotechnically engineering you into a digital computer product, don't worry. Hubbard's Global HeartMath initiative can hook you up to biofeedback wearables that will electronically hypnotize you into copacetic obedience as you are techno-eugenically engineered into a transhuman underling who will happily own nothing, not even your body, in the new normal that is the techno-fascist fourth industrial revolution. Right. So, that's the 5D for you, folks. Anyway, this is the executive team here of First Nations Technical Institute. I am going to be talking about Suzanne Brant a little bit, looking at some of the documents that she has worked on or put her input into. So here, once it loads, it says, so I'm just going to read anyway, and the link will be in the description whether you can see here or not. It says that she provides leadership, vision, and innovation in Indigenous post-secondary education at the First Nations Technical Institute. She is Bear Clan and a member of the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte, Tyendinaga Mohawk Territory, located along the shores of the beautiful Bay of Quinte. She holds a master's degree from York University in Environmental Studies with a focus on Indigenous post-secondary programming. Suzanne graduated from the Institute of Integrated Medicine as an integrated medical clinician. Suzanne is a current and founding board member of Honoring Indigenous Peoples, Understanding the Past, Moving Forward Together, which is an initiative of Rotary International and a committee member of Haudenosaunee Environmental Task Force. So, Rotary, just like the Knights of Columbus, the Freemasons, the Orange Order, the Order of the Eastern Star, and the list of fraternities go on and on. These are generally the kinds of people that are placed in the most influential parts of society, and Masons like to think of themselves as builders, so to speak. So, makes sense. So, Suzanne Brant sits on Rotary International, and also same with Crystal van der Elst, who is the director of Policy Horizons Canada, which was created by the Privy Council. I spoke about her and Policy Horizons in quite a few different videos now, and as well, Crystal van der Elst is the CEO of something called the Global Foresight Group. And so, Suzanne is a past board member of Aboriginal Institute Consortium, St. Lawrence College Board of Governors, Prevent Cancer Now, member of the Great Lakes United, and founding member of CKWE Tyendinaga Radio. And she is a past committee member of the Remedial Action Plan Bay of Quinte, the Environmental Advisory Committee, Mohawks of Bay of Quinte, and Health Advisory Committee, Mohawks of Bay of Quinte. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, by the way. Apologies to the Mohawks. And Suzanne is the 2019 recipient of York University's Bryden Alumni Tentanda Via Award, recognizing a graduate who has demonstrated innovative, unconventional, and daring leadership and success, reflecting the university's motto, Tendanda Via, the way must be tried. And she was appointed in July 2020 to sit on the Premier's Council on Equality of Opportunity, an intergenerational and cross-sector advisory group to provide advice on how young people can overcome social and economic barriers and achieve success. Suzanne has a strong commitment to Indigenous language, culture, and traditions, She is an accomplished visual artist and photographer who has exhibited her work at the Woodland Cultural Center, Brantford, and Gallery 121, Belleville. She is a seasoned gardener and specializes in traditional food systems and medicinal plants. Too bad those things are all thrown with nanotech in there, right, Suzanne? And she apparently has 4 incredible children and 2 beautiful granddaughters. So here, just to read, one paragraph here of this document, which Suzanne and Crystal Vander Elst worked on. It says, given the potential impacts on health and the economy, the risk of reckless creation and unintentional release of synthetic organisms may rise in prominence as a public and policy concern. Best practices to identify, isolate, and treat this particular thing could prove invaluable in responding to intentional introduction of a synthetic biology pathogen. So basically what they're saying is they're using the excuse of something that was never identified, isolated, and treated properly as an excuse to usher in the biodigital convergence. Policy Horizons Biodigital Convergence report explores the broader context in which we might experience and manage bio-risks and opportunities. Klaus Schwab's words, with every crisis there's an opportunity. So now this right here, once it loads, this is Indigenous perspectives on biodigital convergence. And so essentially here I'm going to just start reading and it'll eventually load. It says, new developments in digital technologies and our understanding of biological systems have led to interesting developments at the blurred border between the digital information and biology domains, and also identify the dialectic connection that positions biology as digital information and digital information as biology. Yeah, it's not really a dialectic, but they're trying to convince you that it is, because what is digital and what is biological are 2 separate things, but they're trying to merge those concepts ultimately. So we can also attribute this article to social engineering. The reciprocal relationship is taken up by Policy Horizons Canada, a federal Policy Horizons Canada, a federal government organization that employs foresight to inform the development of adaptive policies and programs in anticipation of increasing uncertainty. In their scoping paper titled Exploring Biodigital Convergence, describes biodigital convergence as the interactive combination, sometimes to the point of merging, of digital and biological technologies and systems. The authors of this document identify 3 manifestations of the biodigital convergence, including the complete integration of biological and digital entities in which new hybrid forms of life are created through the integration of digital technologies in living systems and the incorporation of biological components in digital technologies. Policy Horizons draws on recent reports of the use of digitally controlled dragonflies and locusts for surveillance purposes and digital implants in humans for medical purposes to illustrate the category of biodigital convergence. The coevolution of biodigital technologies occur when innovations in either biological systems or digital systems lead to progress in the other domain that would have otherwise been impossible. 2 examples include gene sequencing technologies paired with artificial intelligence, leading to the engineering of biological organisms that can synthesize organic compounds in unusual ways, and the CRISPR or Cas9 approach, a technology derived from bacteriophage genes and associated enzymes, facilitating gene editing in higher organisms. The conceptual convergence of biological and digital systems, in which greater understandings of the theoretical underpinnings and mechanisms governing both biological and digital systems could lead to a paradigmatic shift in our understanding of these interacting systems. For example, the increasing recognition that complex digital technologies operate like biological systems has led to their description as technology ecosystems. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Great Law of Peace and Haudenosaunee perspective. So the Haudenosaunee peoples, formerly called Iroquois or people of the Longhouse, are the confederacy of 6 nations: Mohawk, Cayuga, Oneida, Onondaga, Seneca, and Tuscarora, united by a common goal to live in harmony. Contemporary Haudenosaunee communities can be found in upstate New York, Quebec, Ontario, Wisconsin, and Oklahoma. The Haudenosaunee worldview does not figure objects or individuals as static. For example, a wooden table is in a constant state of flux or transformation. It is composed of all interactions it had as a tree in the forest, as wood in the workshop, and as a table for eating or other purposes, and also as food for insects, fungi, and other decomposers when it eventually breaks down and returns to the ecosystem. The vibrant dynamism extends to humans, medicine plants, rivers, animals, and the rest of creation. And in this way, Haudenosaunee identify categories are relational and exemplify a process-oriented ontology, much like the nascent Western fields of new materialism and post-humanism. Right. Okay. So it's almost like they're trying to give life again to something that is digital, essentially, but the point is that they're analyzing this from the Haudenosaunee perspective here, where essentially and I think this is probably across the board to all native groups really, but they look at trees and water really as relatives and living beings, which is pretty actually similar to my perspective, and I'm not native personally. But anyway, it says that Mamaday's words evoke the Haudenosaunee principle of Kakanikon Hirorio, basically the good mind. I'm sorry again for that pronunciation. So, and it's derived from the Great Law of Peace. The good mind occurs when the people put their minds and emotions in harmony with the flow of the universe. The good mind confers the ability to make a sound judgment for the welfare of the broader Haudenosaunee society. Connect good mind to land. To the Haudenosaunee, the good mind and land are inseparable, for neither is possible without the other. Furthermore, Sheridan and Longboat rightly assert that where one is as everything to do with one who is. What we take from all this is that the full expression of our humanity is only possible through intimate connection to each other, to territory, and the various natural cycles shaping existence. So, Policy Horizons Canada Exploring Biodigital Convergence paper identifies an important policy question. Could traditional resource-based competitive advantages fade? And suggests that decentralized food production through synthetic biology could lead to the ability to create food and engineer meat without the need for arable land. It's almost like 3D bioprinted meat and stuff like that, and they use the blockchain to do this. So this is completely wrong, unethical, affects our health, and also affects our consciousness very much. I'm sure these people think of themselves like gods of sorts, but they are far from that, of course. They're just cowards that hide behind different figures of sorts and also hide in their, how do I put it? They essentially hide from the public eye, and a lot of these things are very discreet because of things like controlled opposition that point out little aspects of the biodigital convergence, but not the full picture, if you will. And so people think that an agenda revolves around digital ID or revolves around the coercive measures that were taken and forced upon us. Sorry for the language, I just want this video to remain on YouTube. However, those things are really only small aspects of the bigger picture, which is the biodigital convergence, and then wanting to fuse biological life with synthetic AI. So, furthermore, it is our understanding that humans have an obligation to fulfill certain responsibilities to creation, which also includes, at a minimum, not interfering with other beings' ability to fulfill their own responsibilities to creation. Central to these obligations is the Haudenosaunee notion of Kasas-Tanasara, which is the vital life force of the human and more than human individual, human collectivities, and ecological communities, and is a form of power derived from the unity of all matter that supports the continued existence of all creation. How would various biodigital technologies look if we assess them according to the original instructions? Does the co-evolution of biodigital coupled systems allow each party, the biological and the digital, to fulfill their obligations to creation? These crucial questions and more cannot be answered by us alone. Rather, they require collective cultural knowledge and elders' wisdom. An important next step could involve engaging Indigenous elders and knowledge keepers to seek their thoughts on the best way to chart an ethical course forward as we navigate the biodigital convergence. So, it's a field that brings together expertise from two wide streams, setting the stage for innovative scientific exploration and engineering. And as technological advancements in the field gains momentum, it becomes imperative for standards around the area to co-evolve in order to ensure efficient progress. So this is the IEC over here, which is the International Electrotechnical Commission. So here essentially it says that at the IEC, experts from several international organizations, disciplines, and sectors are working together in the Standardization Evaluation Group 12 to identify critical challenges and contribute to a roadmap for future standardization in the area. So all these standardization organizations like the International Organization for Standardization and the IEC and several others are involved in this agenda. So according to IEC expert Francois Collier, who's the chair of SEG12. He's been in the standards industry for nearly 40 years now. Never start with a blank page, he says. A systematic and structured initial research helps save valuable time, as usually there's a lot of work to be done. And he studied biology initially after he went on to become an engineer. And working on biodigital convergence, he was able to come back to his first love of biology and put his extensive professional and standardization experience to use. So, being the chair, he stresses the importance of a systems approach, having a holistic view, being structured and systematic, and thinking in terms of collaborative and multidisciplinary work. Separate working groups within SEG12 have been looking into different areas such as biodigital standardization opportunities for genomics, neuroscience, biosensors, drug discovery, artificial organs, or even human augmentation like brain-machine interfaces. Continual monitoring, enhanced strength, biohacking. SEG12 is also carrying out important work on terminology which will help to facilitate the exchange of information and serve as a basis for future standardization initiatives. And there are many synergies between the different WGs and with other technical committees and subcommittees. Experts work in close cooperation. So Collier himself is also the chair of subcommittees formed by IEC and ISO to standardize the Internet of Things and the digital twin. He gives one example. He says, through our work in SC41, we have also published several standards on the topic of underwater sensors, like ISO, IEC, whatever, and as this one as well, which standardize underwater acoustic sensor networks. While these sensors are used in many industrial applications like detecting underwater pipe leakages, it can also be employed for environmental monitoring, which fall under SEG 12's scope. So, yeah, essentially, so ISO is the International Organization for Standardization, and we can see this is basically the chart here for different sub-departments and groups and fields that are being worked on, and you can see what different sustainable development goals out of the 17 that are worked on here. So you have good health and well-being, which is number 3, zero hunger, number 2, climate action, etc., life underwater, and yeah, and people can look into the sustainable development goals as they please. So now it's interesting too, because with a lot of this agricultural research and as well, underwater sensors, I'm going to be talking about something called twinning. So I already spoke about the digital twin in a prior video where I had called out Cheffrey Gibson for his digital avatar, and that's also the thumbnail on that particular video too. So it says here on KPMG, which it says digital twins are virtual replicas of a physical asset or process and have changed the manufacturing landscape, including how business is done in the aerospace and defense sector. I would go beyond those particular industries. And I've also mentioned KPMG and Marcus Ray video as well. They're just an investment firm that, of course, is supporting the sustainable development agenda. And then here is basically a sort of twinning agreement of sorts. This particular article talks about FABN, which is the Frontenac Arc Biosphere Network, which is in Ontario, Canada, and then the Champlain Adirondack Biosphere Network, CABN, which is in New York and Vermont. So essentially we have a collaboration between the United States and Canada here, and the twinning agreement supports UNESCO and their strategic goals to do the following, which is conserve biodiversity, restore and enhance ecosystem services, and foster sustainable uses of natural resources, contribute to building sustainable, healthy, and equitable societies, economies, and thriving human settlements, facilitate sustainability, science, and education for sustainable development, and support mitigation and adaptation to climate change and other aspects of global environmental change. So essentially the whole climate change scam, if you will, which is also called out by the freedom movement, but definitely not fleshed out in full. And the point is that with those different biosensors and stuff like that, what they're actually doing is twinning, if you will, basically creating replicas, and in this case digital replicas, of everything from blades of grass to different plants to trees, bodies of water, etc. So the point is to kind of create a twin world in the metaverse, if you will, and model this. And so the kind of direction that this actually goes in is basically your social credit score tells you you can't visit the beach, but you can go visit the virtual beach on Meta, and I will not have any part of that system whatsoever. So adapting a little bit on that grant, if you will, and that partnership between that Canadian organization and the American organization, they receive a UNESCO grant. So the ABRDN Charitable Foundation and UNESCO are in the second year of a 3-year partnership to promote sustainability through research and education, with the goal of developing innovative solutions relating to the environment, water, and the ocean. And as part of the partnership between UNESCO and the ACF, the project Promoting sustainable development through UNESCO's programs and sites seeks to promote sustainability and quote-unquote climate neutrality by working through UNESCO-designated sites to act as pilot sites for sustainable development and the implementation of, notably, the goals, Sustainable Development Goals 6, which is water, 13 climate, 14 ocean, and 15 land. And of course, you have the UNESCO Regional Bureau for Science and Culture in Europe selected Champlain Adirondack Biosphere Network, which is in New York. The College of Environmental Science and Forestry's proposal, an atlas of climate and environmental change for Champlain, Adirondack, and Frontenac Arc Biosphere Networks for the second cycle of the project, promoting sustainable development through UNESCO's programs and sites, to receive $25,000 from ACF. The Transboundary project will further the twinning agreement between CABN and FABN by addressing all natural systems associated with the two biosphere regions and serving as a reference and guide for municipal, regional, and national decision makers engaged in planning, decision, and management efforts, and for government, academic, and independent researchers with interest in environment, community, and place. Once fully established, the Atlas, which is a universally accessible digital platform, will have ongoing input from universities, research centers, and national, state, and provincial governments in the US and Canada. Its contents and implications will be disseminated through an ongoing series of workshops. And so, lastly, you have the 7-person project team from CABN, which includes Emmanuel Carter, the regional planner and professor at SUNY-ESF, and CABN steering committee member, Dr. Daniel Cronin, landscape architect professor at SUNY-ESF, Scott Shannon, landscape architect professor at SUNY-ESF, and Sarah Constantinu, Climate Atlas Research Associate, and then also CABN Climate Atlas Intern, Dr. Kelly Suriello, the Associate Professor in Business and Hospitality at Paul Smith's College, CABN Co-Chair Katie Darr, Environmental Analyst at the Lake Champlain Basin Program, CABN Coordinator, and Jim Brangan, Cultural Heritage and Recreation Coordinator at the Lake Champlain Basin Program, CABN Co-Chair. So, here you have it. And then here you have the IEEE, which I cannot remember what this particular organization actually stands for offhand. My apologies. So, basically, this is something about the Internet of X things, essentially. So, with the onset of climate change, of course, so this is the marketing scam, or not the marketing scam, but the BS that they throw out in order to promote their agenda. And climate change is something that also genuinely scares people. So again, with every crisis, there's an opportunity, said Klaus Schwab. With the onset of climate change, climate monitoring represents one of the biggest challenges facing the world today. Global climate change directly impacts various economic, environmental, and societal aspects such as safety, food security, and energy. A recent report from the United Nations Development Program shows that between 1998 to 2017, climate-related disasters caused death to 1.3 million people and left 4.4 billion injured. If you say so, such disasters also cause an average economic loss of hundreds of billions of dollars annually, and in this context, it was not a surprise that climate action was added to the Global Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations Development Program. Thus, predicting the magnitude of future impacts is of paramount importance. Many variables affect climate change, so they say, such as ocean salinity, ocean CO2 emissions, land dynamics, cloud properties, atmospheric temperature, and lightning. Therefore, monitoring these variables is vital to understand changes in global environment, and information communication technologies are beneficial for monitoring these climate variables, and in this regard, the World Meteorological Organization and International Telecommunication Union outline the potential ICTs for climate monitoring, and at present, ICTs such as sensing instruments on satellites, sensors in oceans, and weather radars are the primary sources that provide climate change information, and several studies show that the use of various Internet of Things, including Internet of Underwater Things, Internet of Underground Things, and Internet of Space Things, can be of great benefit in studying these climate changing variables. For simplicity here, we use the framework of the Internet of X Things that combines information from all these types of IoT networks. So the Internet of X Things framework consists of smart sensors in different radical spaces, oceans, underground, and supposedly in space. And for example, the sensors in oceans measure different variables such as ocean salinity, acidity, and temperature, and likewise buried sensors can provide information about the ground changes in soil, seismic activities, and gas sensing. In the same way, satellites equipped with the sensors provide information such as ocean altitude, cloud properties, amount of sun radiations, spatiotemporal knowledge of lands, and CO2 emission from oceans. Combining all this sensing information can constitute a revolutionary advancement in climate monitoring, yet it is a challenging task because of issues with communication between networks and data analysis of such a large amount of data. Below, we separately describe the different challenges facing Internet of X Things, from issues related to sensing and communication, localization, and the type of sensing devices. However, that information will be available to you as links will be in the description, and I think I've said more than enough in this presentation, other than the fact that in this video, trust the path here, if you will. It's popcorn entertainment is also just what I wanted to say about it at best. And also, lastly, too, as well, people need to start talking about this biodigital convergence in the big picture and not just talking about, what we'll say small potatoes like digital identity or, even the quote-unquote for lack of better words. Again, I apologize for the terms I use and that sort of a thing. I want this to remain on YouTube. But yeah, people got to stop compartmentalizing the information and focus on the big picture. And some of the time, too, it's not really their fault, as they happen to be misinformed by people like Cheffrey Gibson, for instance, and other members of the freedom movement like Kellyanne Wolf, Chris Sky, and even the Direct Democracy Party like James McNair. So, all in all, people should be working together on solutions by informing people, for one thing, about this agenda, and then also perhaps making their own flyers and talking to each other in their communities, having face-to-face discussions and not necessarily just virtual ones, if you will. And also, too, with this video that's being made, unfortunately, I'm aiding in the creation of a digital twin for myself by simply doing this, but I ultimately feel it's worth it to bring out the information, and I won't have any part of that Web3 based biodigitalization system. So people got to form ethics committees as well and bring these things up to their local MPs and anybody else who might be willing to listen. And even if the local MPs are not willing to listen, you can at least say that you've tried, and we can go from there. But people can feel free to ask me questions if they so desire. And also to conclude, I will say that it was James Scott that pretty much helped push me in this direction, if you will, talking about the biodigital convergence. So thank you very much to James Scott. He has a bookstore in Ottawa, and I will be leaving a link for his contact information in the comments. So thank you very much for watching, everybody, and please take care of yourselves. Thank you.